I am a horse. I see a water source. Plop, plop. That is my toilet. And honestly, this song, we just kept building and adding verses. There was
And harmonies.
beautiful harmonies. And honestly, I was laughing so hard I could hardly walk. It was like we had to just stop because we were not going to make good time at all because I was laughing way too hard. Hi, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Molly.
And you're listening to the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. So today we're talking about day 5 in the winds. This is our journey from that beautiful flat plain that we slept on the night before that had the nice view of the sunset and also no neighbors, to Shadow Lake, which is one of the most popular areas in the winds to my understanding. We were going to be seeing the Cirque of the Towers over the next couple of days, and that seems to be really the only popular part of the winds that I know of. It's very popular for climbing, but it's also just really beautiful. So we were really excited to have the opportunity to go there. I wrote that the night before we just slept so well, and I remember this campsite, which again, not a real campsite, just kind of dispersed camping, a nice spot that we found with a little tree over it. It just was so quiet. You know, there was like all these little pine needles around you, so it was just comfortable. The wind wasn't really just blowing and shredding through your tent all night long because we were kind of in a protected area. And the crazy part is, I don't think anyone walked by our tent, you know, all morning long. Just because.
And we were sitting out there with all of our gear exploded everywhere around us as far as the eye could see. So I think if someone walked by, we would have noticed.
Yeah, I would say I went pretty hard on just spreading my stuff everywhere. I don't remember why, but I have pictures from this day. I think it's just because we were trying to really dry everything out and air everything out. And there were these perfect rocks to lay it on. And so it was kind of like one of us had to stay with our stuff and like keep the squirrels and other animals from it, and then the other person was kind of, I don't know, probably Molly was making me breakfast or something.
You think about all the creatures in the world, like what do? Like you think of like a bird or a rabbit, like they're collecting things, right? They're collecting items, they're bringing it to their home, they're piling them up. But no, we were just exploding everything around, spreading it out further and further. And I think we thought we were drying it out. I don't really know.
I just have this really vivid memory of like my raincoat was laying far away from me, and suddenly I think it was a squirrel or something just like ran so fast over it. And I was like, I kind of feel like I have to get my stuff a little closer to me because I can't control all these animals. So we kind of had a late start that day. How far do we have to go? Only 11 miles, which is still a decently long day, but we had such longer days that it was kind of feeling like a nice taper, like, only 11.1 miles or so. And actually, I think we thought we were going to camp. No, I think we were planning to go all the way to Shadow Lake.
But the reason why we didn't have to go so far is because we had extended our trip. The last 2 days we had hiked more miles than we anticipated. And at this point, we were actually... Initially, we were planning to be out for 8 days, and we were starting to wonder if we were going to make it actually 7.
So we started on the trail, and this part of the trail was one that I would actually call a little bit boring. It kind of was through like an open range area, so there were cattle kind of around. And it just was like you would go up and then you go down. It was like you'd go over the hill and then you got up the hill. Now you go over the hill. Now you go down the hill. And the scenery was fine, but it wasn't really that exciting. It felt more like we were walking in kind of, like a pasture or something. You got to watch your step because you got to watch out for that pie on the ground, the cow pies. And we finally saw our first person of the day. He was headed northbound, but I feel like we both were almost a little surprised to see another person out there, which was kind of a nice feeling. But after several miles, we got to finally turn and head towards the Cirque of the Towers, which are these just huge, towering granite mountains, I guess you could call them, peaks. And it's just so stunning. They're just like, I don't know, they're really incredible as they just come right up out of the ground. And so we finally had a really awesome view to look at.
And we were in the wind. I mean, like, right, we're in the Wind River Range the entire time. But like Carrie described, as we were going through more of the pasture land, it was just like this high plain, which is incredible because we were over 10,000 feet this entire time. So like if we think about our time in Oregon, like the South Sister is 10,000, like 400 feet. So we're at the height of a volcano that people are climbing to reach. That's one of the higher points in the state. And then in Wyoming, it's just like plains that go forever at that elevation. So when we rounded the corner and then all of those like granite towers were just right ahead of us, we had to stop and just like really soak it in, do like a little photo shoot, just because we'd seen a lot of beautiful things on this trip and we were really excited for the Cirque of the Towers, but this view was just very, very striking and very like incredible.
And one thing that made it even more striking was all of a sudden this group of horseback riders started coming up over the ridge. And, you know, I felt like I was in a Western movie just because they're all riding with their cowboy hats on their horses and coming across these beautiful plains with these dramatic mountains in the background. And it was just such a cool little view. We actually did get to chat with them for a little bit. They were just there to ride their horses, basically. And I was like, yeah, what better place could you go? There's just a wide open area and you got plenty of horses and it seems like you're going to have a good day. So we took some pictures for them. They took some pictures for us and we just were ready to head towards the Cirque of the Towers. So we actually got to go downhill for a little while now because even though we just basically been walking across this flat plain, we were still super high and you have to descend, of course, always it seems, before you ascend. So as we started heading downhill, it was again a little bit more repetitive, but with some better views. But one thing that started kind of cracking us up is there's quite a few horses in this area. I think it's quite popular to ride horses. And it just seemed like every single little tiny creek or water crossing that we got to was just filled with horse poop. And it was just something that we both had to laugh about because it's kind of like there's all these places on the trail where the horse could poop. Like they could just be pooping continuously as they walked. But for some reason, they're like, I'm at a freshwater source in a place where those are a little bit few and far between. I'm going to let her fly. And so, of course, because it's hot, it's monotonous, we made a song for some reason. I made a song. It's a classic, and it kind of goes, I'll just give you a little taste. It goes like this. I am a horse. I see a water source. Plop, plop. That is my toilet. And honestly, this song, we just kept building and adding verses. There was
and harmonies.
Beautiful harmonies. And honestly, I was laughing so hard I could hardly walk. It was like we had to just stop because we were not going to make good time at all because I was laughing way too hard. And I just think that's like one of those fun things about when you're out and about. Eventually, everything just becomes funny, even if it's horses that poop in your water.
And thankfully, I would trust my filter. I would filter from that. Well, I don't know.
I would say go a little upstream. I wouldn't directly scoop the horse turds out.
Yeah, like you put that in your canuck and try to strangle that through. Anyways, fortunately we were getting close to a creek crossing, so we didn't need to get any water from those spicy water sources. But yeah, it's do you remember, Carrie, when we were on the John Muir Trail, there was that one person who said, like, after you've been out for X number of days, like, you just start to get in the rhythm of the trail. I don't know. There was some person that we talked to, and they just talked about, like, after a certain number of days on a trip, like, you get to a different level of just, I don't know, enjoyment. And I feel like that's finally where we were. We were turning the corner, and like we've talked about in this series, the winds hit us really hard. The elevation, like heavy packs for, 8 days of travel without any resupplies. It just was a really, really hard, challenging trip, especially at the very beginning. One of those where you think, like, I love backpacking, but why does it feel so hard right now? Is it always this hard and I just forget it because I have such happy memories? And like, this day was one of those days where, like I wrote in my journal, after the fact where, walking felt powerful and strong with good strides and no significant discomfort or fatigue. And I don't know, it was just one of those really beautiful days where you were just so happy to be in the mountains that you had to write a horse song.
Yeah. So after we finished descending, we kind of came upon this creek crossing, and it was so fun. There was this whole little family that was there, actually several families, and the dads were all fishing with their kids, and the moms were bringing up the rear of the group with their alpacas. And it was just so fun to see families out and about, enjoying, recreating. The little kids were just so excited when they would catch fish. They'd be like, "What kind of a fish is this, Dad? What kind of a fish is this?" And so it was just kind of a sweet little scene to come upon as we were in the winds. We crossed that little creek, and honestly, quite refreshing because it felt a little bit hot outside.
And I'm looking at the map now. I guess it's called the East Fork River. And it was so, like Carrie said, just delightful. I think it was about knee deep. It was like totally crystal clear. You could see like the small fish in it. And it was just like icing the whole lower half of your leg. Felt amazing.
And not only that, no horse apples in sight. So we decided that we would go ahead and have our lunch there. I think we just took off our shoes and put our feet in the water for our lunch because we thought it would feel so good. We had our delicious trail pizzas, and we just kind of enjoyed the moment. Although I feel like we also thought, well, we'd better kind of get a move on because we wanted to get to the Cirque at a time when we were going to be able to still find a campsite. So once we'd enjoyed our little lunch there, we started walking. And this part was kind of funny because I think for some reason we thought we were going to have to gain a ton of elevation. And while we did gain some elevation, it never felt bad. We just kept waiting for the bad part to come, waiting for the bad part to come. And it was just kind of like, oh, we're doing some walking uphill. But the funny part is we were striding it out, and I wrote that we felt so good and strong that we actually missed the junction for our trail. And Molly, how far extra do you think that we went totally out of the way? It was funny because we were just kind of walking along, striding it out. We felt really good. And then we started to really curve sharply.
Dude, it was over half a mile that we added on, like including the out and the back. It was like almost 0.7 miles.
Crazy. I feel like we were like, it's kind of weird because we're curving really sharply away from where we were anticipating we would go. And then we got up on this hillside and we looked down and we could see the trail very clearly. So it was kind of like, ooh, okay, well, that didn't work so good. So we had to kind of double time it, although in the end we didn't really need to double time it, but we had to head back. And of course you're always a little bit annoyed, but it's just funny because realistically the problem was just that we felt so good. You know,
that's hilarious. Like, it wouldn't have had to be 11 miles that day. It would have been closer to 10, but we did a little detour. So yeah, it was interesting because the little trail junction, it was like kind of hard to see. I don't know, like it is an actual trail, but I feel like it's become more frequently traveled over the last, 10 years or so. But so this trail was just like kind of fun because it was like we weren't on the CDT anymore. We were kind of breaking off and just heading up towards Shadow Lake and Texas Pass eventually. And as we went along, it's just like we got closer and closer to these really just massive granite peaks. And like Carrie said, we were able to maintain a really good pace. The gain was never too sharp, and it just felt easier than it should have been, which is such a wonderful feeling anytime you're out backpacking, especially at altitude.
And not only that, the views were kind of getting to be a treat. It was like we were just really coming into this beautiful not valley, but I guess low point that had all, I don't know, it was just like stunning with all the evergreen trees, and then the, area by the water that's so lush and green, and then the area by our trail that was kind of all the dead grass, but it somehow just made the backdrop of the granite even more beautiful, and the skies were just this beautiful blue, and we had like the Toy Story kind of beautiful, like big fluffy clouds. So it was just beautiful. And sometimes I think that when it's beautiful, it's a little bit easier.
We arrived at Shadow Lake after making really pretty good time. And if you've listened to our podcast for more than a couple episodes, you'll know that one of my like large stressors on a trip is being able to find a campsite, especially when you're going to a place that's a little bit more popular. So we knew that Shadow Lake is popular for a reason. It's so incredibly beautiful. And we'd initially talked about going just a little bit higher and camping at a different area. However, I think, did we know that there was going to be a forecast for some thunderstorms? So we decided we didn't want to end up in an exposed location that was above trees, but we figured that Shadow Lake would be a good spot to be able to have a little bit of cover and not be the highest thing around. So, oh my gosh, when we rounded the corner and like went into the basin where Shadow Lake is located, like we talk about these towering granite peaks, just like so much. But it's not the same in terms of magnitude and like as like Yosemite Valley, where you have like this granite that's like, thousands of feet above you. But I feel like it's a similar feeling because it's just so in your face and so incredible. You'll definitely have to check out our pictures this week on Instagram and Facebook to just get a feel for what the winds had to offer to us. But yeah, we rounded the corner and it just felt like I was in a movie or a picture that from Italy or something like that. It was incredible. So we wanted to spend time like lounging and just enjoying the scenery, but we felt like first things first, we did need to find a spot to pitch our tent. So we began wandering the maze of kind of user-made trails and trying to figure out a good place to pitch a tent. And I think it took us a decent amount of time to figure out something that would work, but we found a spot that would be quite suitable for us. And I think we started out setting up our camp and decided that once we had that taken care of, we might give ourselves the joy of a little swim in the lake.
And one thing I would say is it wasn't like there were a ton of people there, but I feel like sometimes when you go to those areas where it's not as popular as like, let's say Washington, that everyone kind of wants a little more space and privacy for their campsites. And so it's like if you see someone in a spot and you're like, oh, there is a spot that's good, but it's pretty close to them. Well, in Washington or some other place where there's going to be a ton of people, you'd know that it's just okay because at a certain point, there's not enough campsites. But there it's kind of like, well, let's just keep looking until we can find a better spot. And so I think at first I got a little nervous because I thought, well, maybe we're not going to find a decent spot to camp, but we finally did. And then, of course, we are setting up our tent and setting up our camp, getting everything all put away and stowed away in our bear bags out of our backpacks. And, of course, all these big clouds rolled in and it got cold. So we couldn't really go swimming. So naturally, we kind of just looked through our bear bags and picked up snacks that we liked and started munching. And that I did laugh because I was like, well, it's actually kind of bad to get to camp early because now you're just thinking about all the food you're going to eat.
And fortunately, in this situation, I think at this point we'd kind of come to a decision that we didn't need to necessarily be out for 8 days. We were like going to have like a very short day the next day into the Cirque of the Towers, and then the following day we could hike out pretty easily. So at this point we knew we were carrying a surplus of food. So then it makes it very interesting because you can kind of have free reign to just eat whatever you want, and that's always a very fun experience when you're on the trail. I wrote in my journal that we dug perfect cat holes. So it was one of those days where you're like at camp early enough that you like could really take your time to create a masterpiece for yourself the next day. And so, yeah, once we'd gotten everything set up and made sure that our food was stowed, so that, I think that we didn't see any bears here, but there is always the possibility of something roaming around. I think you'd read some things about a bear being problematic. So that's why food storage is so important. And at this point, I think you're a little further south than grizzly territory, technically. But still, right, we want to make sure that we don't even have black bears that are enticed to access our food. So we made our trip down to the water, and it's kind of interesting because the shoreline here, there's one area where it was pretty easy to get to the water, but the further along the lake you were, the higher the hillside was and the more boulders you had to clamber over to get down to the water. These are rocks that are like the size of a car, like they're massive. So fortunately we weren't that high up and we didn't have to clamber over a lot of boulders, but we did do a little rock hopping and found like a nice spot to just sit to really view the granite towers, and then got to see some fish jumping as well.
And it was one of those scenarios where it was kind of funny to be clambering over the rocks because, of course, you've got your camp shoes on, so it's not like your best traction. And then in our hands, we're carrying our water filter, our Canuck bag. Each of us had 2 water, or at least 1 water bottle that we wanted to refill. Plus we had, something else. So it's like our hands are just like filled with all this stuff. So you kind of just have, but if you fall, I mean, obviously we know how to swim, so it'd be fine. But then I'm wearing my puffy, so I don't want to get my puffy wet. So it was just kind of comical the way that we were having to climb over things with all of our stuff in our hands just so we could reach the water, get enough water to filter for our dinner, and filter our water for tomorrow.
That's actually so funny, right? You think of if you're climbing, you have like a specific climbing shoe. And then in this situation, you're like clambering over boulders and we're wearing Tevas, and it's just the way that it works.
Somehow it works, so it wasn't really a problem. I guess we should wear Tevas rock climbing in the future.
Hey, there you go.
So we were able to get our water, boil our food, enjoy that, and then we kind of just came back down and really got to enjoy the sunset. And so that was kind of fun, and it was a nice balance for our trip, right, where we had some of these really long, big push days where we really just were kind of like go, go, go. And then this day was a nice balance where, I just laid on a rock and I looked at rocks for like a couple of hours, and we watched the fish jump, and the sunset was really pretty because, of course, the storm was rolling in. We're in the winds, so what else could possibly be happening? And right as the sun set, we were like, okay, well, I guess we have to go back up to our campsite. And then,
which I want to comment for a quick minute. The alpineglow was unreal at the lake. Like the way that the rocks got lit up for like a few moments as the sun was just starting to set was incredible. But yes, after the alpenglow.
Yeah, we finally decided, okay, we're going to head uphill. And right as we started heading up, it was like these big fat raindrops started coming down. So, of course, we ran to our tent. And then I can't remember if maybe there was a little cloud burst and it kind of chilled out, or if we just said, okay, we got to put our raincoats on, put our big girl pants on, and go brush our teeth and like make sure everything's stored so that we can just go to bed. Okay. And so we went to bed, and it kind of just started raining, and we were like, oh, this is kind of a fun little rain. And then it was like raining even more, and then raining even harder. And then it was kind of funny because it's just both of us in our tent, and we're like, oh, okay, I gotta try to get a good sleep for tomorrow. And then it's just like, and it's like so much hail, and then the hail is just getting bigger and bigger.
And then we have like mega lightning and just thunder rumbling overhead, so loud. I mean, at the location like where we camped, I think that we were, let me just pull this up real quick to be certain of our elevation. I guess we were at like right around 10,000 feet, like 10,300 feet. So you're up there a little ways, and the lightning is like I feel like it's like shaking everything around you. And like Carrie mentioned, it's just hailing nonstop, and you're like, oh, like the tent is gonna be okay, right?
Yeah, I know. I was like, well, we've never really had this much hail in our tent before, but good news, you guys. The Nemo Hornet 2P from 2020, whatever the edition that was, stands up to hail just fine. Up to, I don't know, whatever size that was. I can't really guesstimate it. It's like the size of mini marshmallows. I believe that's how the weathermen determine it. But anyway, so one thing I wrote in my journal that night was that it was raining, and I said, it's fitting, as there should never be a whole day in the winds without rain. Thank you so much for listening to yet another episode of the
Two Sisters on Adventures podcast.
Remember, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram to see photos or videos about the things that we talked about today. And maybe I'll even put a full-length video of the horse poop song so that you can learn it for your trip to the winds. Thanks so much for listening, you guys.
Bye. Good to be back.